Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So, welcome to IIGC Talks. Really thankful to Ganapathy sir, Pooja, and Manasi for being here today. Means a lot to us. Starting the second shoot for the World Influencer Day. Why we are celebrating World Influencer Day remains the first subject. I'll quickly say a word about influencers today, though our life today is full of them, but we also look back at times when we had no influencers and our reach was very limited to what was shown to us and it was not very democratic in the views we used to get. Today we all live better, we travel better, we eat better, and a lot of value influencers and creators have added to our lives. So IIGC made this sincere effort of coining a day, which is 2nd of December, where we celebrate influencers as much as we can, right? So not taking too much time out of the calendars now, I'll quickly start with Ganapathy sir, a veteran in the industry, a CMO of LT Foods today, ex-Dabur. So we'll start with you, a quick introduction, and if you could just tell us one point where you felt mainstream work is now influencers, where they were in patches at a certain time when they popped up. What was a pivotal moment when you realized influencers now are mainstream?
See, I've had over 20 odd years of experience doing sales and marketing. And I can tell you that one pivotal moment for influencer marketing came when we were going through the unfortunate pandemic, okay, which is where all conventional media took a backseat. And then there was this whole need of credibility and a need to have people who were relatable, undergoing the similar sort of problems, to speak to me or to communicate to me. There was a whole dearth of communication because it was riddled with fear. And in that, a need for brands to communicate in the more realistic, down to earth sort of level got this to start. Okay, and I think that's been a big inflection point from where influencers came in play. Having said that, you should also look at the fact that influencers have always been the way. It's just that they've become more organized today. Next door aunties, neighbors, grandmothers, shopkeepers at some levels, they were all influencers. They all took that role. Today, it's just that the nature of contemporary life is such that you will not be able to have access to long-term relationships of that nature to end up having a strong connection with just in those particular individuals. And technology offers you to be in touch with a whole new set of people who can be credible and yet relatable and yet speak in the language which you would want to listen to. So I think that's the huge shift that happened, and there's been no looking back after that. Today, we are in an ecosystem where influencer marketing is super critical for brands to not just amplify their campaigns, but also make them heard by people at the last mile. So I think it's important, and that's why it's gained currency, and that's why it's growing at a pace which I don't think so there's any other media vehicle which is growing at. Okay, so that's where it is.
And you've obviously seen a substantial increase in the percentage of your spends going in influencers. And is it like skyrocketing?
If you look at it, off the digital spend, it's probably the most important spend today. It's got the highest salience there, comparable to the likes of what you would do on Google and Meta. And I think a lot of content, not just that, but a lot of content today is getting driven, and tested through this ecosystem. So a lot of ideas are also springing up because you can see responses of individuals through this ecosystem and substantially alter and improve your content through this ecosystem.
Moving over to Pooja. Now, Pooja, CMO of Philips Domestic Appliances, Versuni. What's been your take on this? Where do you see the pivotal moment? And as a brand in a very different category to LT Foods and Daawat, how do you look at influencers today and what's your thought on that?
Sahil, first of all, thank you for getting us here. I think it's a very important conversation that needs to be done because influencers are becoming a very important part of all of our marketing budgets and our marketing strategies, right? However, influencers as a phenomena is not new. I think purely by way of their name, influencers, they've always existed wherever there has been a trust crisis. If you reflect back on the whole journey of brands over the last 2 decades, every time any brand has faced a credibility or a trust crisis, they've gone to somebody whose voice has been trusted by people. That somebody could be a well-known celebrity, that somebody could be sometimes people just in lab coats, that they could be common woman, man, whatever, right? What's happened with the proliferation of smartphones, availability of high-speed, inexpensive internet, and advent of social media is that the numbers of people whose voice actually carries weight, carries trust, carries credibility has increased. And I think that's what has made influencers such a big mainstream conversation at this level. It's almost a democratization of influencers, if nothing else, in that sense, right? Personally, I think for me and for brands that I have worked with in the past, one very pivotal moment really occurred somewhere around 2014. I used to work with Philips at that point in time, and Philips had just invented and launched the air fryer. And we came up with a promise which was incredible to sound. We spoke about frying without oil. Nobody would believe us when we said frying without oil is even a possibility and the food is going to taste just as great. And I think it's a good brand name. Everybody loves this brand. There's a huge amount of trust associated with the brand. But for an incredible promise, to get some amount of credibility, we needed voices that people could trust and believe in to even come in for trials. And I think that was our moment to start with influencers, where these people carried actually the voice of the brand, added their own weight to it, right? And took it to people, which I think gave us the initial rounds of success when it started with that. So I think fundamentally influencers have always been critical wherever there's been a trust deficit. As we are moving forward as a society, I think trust deficit is becoming more and more common. And therefore, I think in the coming future, influencers will have even more importance in the whole marketing strategy across brands, across categories, etc. And I think that's also reflected in the way we are budgeting for them, the way we are, as brands, engaging with influencers. We're just standing at the cusp of a very, very big movement, which I think all of us also have the responsibility to shape and drive.
Excellent. And that movement looks brighter for the creator economy, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because they are the ones who are carriers of this, right? As consumers, we've always been recipients of it. As marketers, we've always been users of it. I think what we are experiencing right now is 20 years ago or 18 years ago, we had only 4 faces that carried any weight, right, in the country. And all brand would scramble to go behind them, irrespective of the relevance of that face to your brand or to your category or whatever. Today, we are lucky to have millions of them, each with their own, probably a smaller sphere of influence, but a far stronger sphere of influence.
But do you also see that as a downside at times of some of them coming up and saying negative things about your brands also? And how do you then look at, I know it's too early in the conversation, but still asking, since you said that it's build the credibility, are you also as a brand at the same time worried about the fact that how can some of them also start bashing us? Not naming anyone, I've named enough people already on that.
I think social media is a double-edged sword anyways, right? Every time you want to have real conversations, you have to be open, you have to be vulnerable. If end of the day, your brand and your product is authentic about solving a problem in consumer's life, I think brands and products shouldn't be worried about it.
But do you think it makes brands a lot more accountable? That
100%.
Like, 100%. We've had some very large examples of, an electric scooter company, who was supposedly doing well beyond a certain point. And then suddenly comes one comic creator who had nothing to do with auto as an industry by any far sense of imagination. And that led to a nationwide revolution against that particular brand. Stocks tumbled, the organization, the founder was seen all over the place negatively. So do you think, while we talk about all the great parts where influencing has led to consumers, getting good recommendations, but do you also think influencers also at times make the brands a lot more accountable? कि मेरे को भी ध्यान रखना है यार कि गड़बड़ हुई तो बहुत बड़ा issue हो सकता है.
But that's also great, right? I think in an economy which is growing at the pace that we are growing, the number of brands per capita is increasing at a mind-boggling pace for us. To not have accountability is actually pretty dangerous for the consumers, right? And you see this very, very well reflected in the service industry. Product industry के तो अभी भी आपको बहुत कम examples मिलेंगे. But you look at service industry. The moment you're experiencing a service and it is not up to the expectation or up to the benchmark for which you've paid, you automatically see people posting negative reviews about it, and brands start to take cognizance of it. In fact, it's a very fun anecdote in some of my friend circles that the only way to get some brands to fix up their service is by talking about them in social media, right? So it does make brands a lot more accountable. In fact, brands that don't take it seriously are brands that need to really wake up and smell coffee. Because they do have a massive, massive impact on your overall brand equity, and as you mentioned, direct correlation with your stock performance, your business performance, absolutely everything. 100%.
Mansi, good morning, Mansi. Thank you for being here. Head of Digital Marketing, WN Aurelia. I mean, what is your perspective on the world we live in today? And I'll give it to you to speak around the creator
Sure.
economy today. And yeah.
I think, firstly, great that we are celebrating this day. I think influencers are a great source of information, authenticity, relatability, and entertainment as well, right? I think they have brought that spice in our life, and I definitely feel that this day has to be celebrated, and they have the credit to be given, right? And as a marketer sitting here, we value their work, and this is the day that we celebrate that, right? Belonging to fashion industry, I think for us, influencers are the most relatable content pieces, right? You take a celebrity for making sure that, hey, people see your product, but you take influencers to make sure that that product is relatable to you. For us, they are so in after I think COVID, he has mentioned 2019. After that, because the digital era has completely shifted after 19, right? We also saw a lot of shift happening in consumer behavior in terms of they make their decisions, they buy the products, and for that, influencers becomes the key, right? Because they talk real things, they talk real stuff which I want to hear. Example, let's say influencer saying, yaar mere kurte mein pockets aa gaye, it's such a relief for me. That something is more relatable, like, rather than me saying that itme sequence hai, isme ye hai. They talk real language, and there are people sitting across us, right? They're sitting
But in industry like yours, I mean, specifically in yours, there is like content all over when
Yeah.
it comes to fashion, right? So how do
Correct.
you make sure you stand out in that entire clutter?
Firstly, the product stands out, right? I mean, if your product is great, if
But
your
can I
product
feel the
stands
product
out,
in a
no,
fashion?
the way, exactly what I'm saying, the content per se can create in such a way that you can actually relate to that product, right? Because you talk about the USPs not in terms of a larger lens. You talk about the USPs which you and me can relate to, right? Could be a price point, could be the colors, could be the trends which are celebrities are wearing. You have to make sure that those content something is something I can actually go and buy those products. The CTAs are not only driven by the product but the usability of those products, and that's something is really working well for us. I think this also gives a lot of opportunities to people sitting across as a marketer or maybe influencers to come together to collaborate this industry in a much better way. We are very sure that this industry is going to grow in a larger extent, and I think this entire setup will help us to regulate, monitor, and also scale up in a with much better sense, and bringing the authenticity to the consumers, which is the main problem.
Ganapathy sir, back to you. World Influencer Day. Mansi has already said that it's a great move and we all should deliver a lot more to the lovely creator economy. What are your few thoughts on the World Influencer Day? And it sounds like a huge responsibility. And you're also a board advisor with IIGC, by the way, reminding you of that. How do you bring in some value, or what are the thoughts on the World Influencer Day?
I think it's a very important move to celebrate, because unlike the other mediums of communication, which are impersonal, these are individuals. While we, collectively aggregate them under a word called influencers or content creators, these are individuals. And individual effort at such a scale, if my number is not wrong, it's about 4 million influencers in India, 24 billion economy globally, set to become 10 times in the next 7-8 years. These are individuals. And the only way I know that individuals can reach to their full potential is by celebrating the effort which they've put in. And I think it's of utmost responsibility. I'm very happy that IIGC has taken this upon themselves to kind of come to a day where we can actually celebrate the effort put in. And we also take this opportunity to responsibly lead this movement forward. It's important. Currently, what most of the time goes against content creators and influencers at scale is the fact that it's a fairly deregulated, unregulated sort of ecosystem. Monitoring to investment to return, a lot of this is still not as hardwired as the other mediums of communication have become. They are data-rich ecosystems, but they still have a lot of qualitative assessment when it comes down to actually becoming individuals. I think it's time that with such a big component of investment going into this ecosystem, we not only celebrate the effort that this ecosystem has come about, we also make an effort to regulate this as we go through and to make it have positive impact. It's not just about the fact that you will be able to make better profits on your P&L, but it is also about a larger social impact if we were to continue to fuel this ecosystem. Otherwise, we will just create offshoots of people who will drive profitability. And I don't think so. Human beings need to work with that sort of an ecosystem in mind.
Absolutely. No, I think day before yesterday, hosted 3 large creators, and I think the word responsibility is something which is also being widely discussed, because it's not just the brands whose voices needs to go out, even the creators. I was even surprised to know some of them mentioned that once in a quarter, they also go and meet their top fans. And a lot of top fans also tell them कि यार तुमने वो content बनाया था यार, वो तो बिल्कुल सही नहीं था, तुम इस बारे में तो बात ही नहीं कर रहे, अब तुम शुरू तो वहाँ से हुए थे हो. They're also looking at the aging of their audience. Creator ये भी सोच रहा है कि 6 साल पहले जो मुझे follow कर रहा था वो 20 साल का था, अब वो 26 का हो गया, maybe he's got married. So they're also very, very careful on the responsibility part, where they also want to always be close to the audiences who actually follow them beyond the usual. So there's a huge amount of shift happening, trust me. Totally with you on the data part. I think data also needs to come up on the surface in a lot more way. Pooja, quickly, when you look at influencers today on a large scale, and we're celebrating the World Influencer Day, do you think they're equivalent of celebrities now? Few of them put together, maybe not in isolation. Like if there are 10 good macros, would you equate them with, say, one of your large celebs?
I actually think 2 of them play very independent roles, very independent of each other. Celebrities, in my view, have now become mediums of reach. With the average number of brands a macro celebrity is endorsing, it'll be silly to think that they carry a lot of, influencing capability, I would say. They definitely carry a lot of reach. You associate with a celebrity and you reach much faster to the people that you're trying to reach to. I think influencers or content creators actually play a very complementing role to celebrities. So celebrities almost end up being the carriers of the voice, and influencers have the ability to become carriers of credibility and trust and relatability, like Mansi mentioned. And I think those are very, very complementing roles, each actually bringing out the best from the other.
But have you seen a transition in the way you spend on both the silos?
Definitely. In fact, I think influencers as a community themselves are in the middle of a transition right now, right? We typically classify them as macro, micro, nano, right? And there is this very popular 1990 principle at some level that is used. I think that itself is transforming at a certain level. The macro influencers are beginning to become vehicles of both reach and credibility. The micro and the nano ones are the ones actually that help you dive into the deep pockets that you really want to go to. And therefore, there is a definite shift in the way we allocate budgets to these 2 sort of pockets. Personally, I think for brands like us, which are anyways well known, enjoy a high level of credibility, Philips does have the 130-year-old equity at some level, which makes it easier for us to reach people. But every time we come up with new concepts, every time we come up with new appliances that have not been experienced by the country before, I think being able to work with these creators which actually carry your message, your utility right down to the people who need to know it from them, it's actually pretty helpful to be able to work with them on a long-term basis versus just spending on one big guy and getting to the reach equation.
Also, to add one point, I think very interestingly, nowadays this role is interchanging.
Yeah.
you see a lot of celebrities now becoming a content creators because they know how to reach their audience, right? You see Vidya Balan, for example, you see that she has become a content creator. So it's a very interchanging role,
Yeah,
right?
a lot of them have become
Correct.
creators,
So
yeah.
complementary is one part and also interchanging. So it's very difficult to now bifurcate. Exactly what you said. Awareness.
But does it
media-
reflect the same in your category as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I think they also want to connect with their audience. And what is the best way than creating a content or being on Instagram or a YouTube, right?
But don't you think the audience is getting smarter? I mean, I'm sure there is one set of segment you can, woo with a big face. But don't you think the consumer is getting smarter? Like, we were running a large, project for an auto company, and even they later realized that, I know, yeah, this celebrity is never going to drive this 15 lakh rupee car.
Correct.
Don't you think the audience is getting
It
smarter?
again depends on the pockets of the country that you're looking at, right? There are certain pockets which
So masses still can get
correct,
impacted.
they still relate to celebrities, where the content creators, exactly what you said, can actually be the voice of your brand.
Also, Sahil, I don't think celebrities are used for relatability. They're probably used for aspiration.
Absolutely.
That's an
Correct.
aspiration.
You know, like if this celebrity...
But relatable aspiration, right? I mean,
I don't know. There's nothing called relatable aspiration.
Yeah, there's
There's just
aspiration is something you want to be. It's not. It's something.
no,
you
I
see
say
yourself.
relatable aspiration because I would get inspired by a celebrity if I want to do something he's done. I mean, in the sense of
Correct.
maybe let's take a car. So IIGC is nothing against celebrities, by the way, just a conversation. But I would get inspired if he's driving a car I believe he's driving at least, right? I don't believe he'll drive that car. How will I get inspired if it's an aspiration?
I think the flip side is to say that if a certain car, let's just say, of a certain price point, actually has managed to rope in somebody who you aspire to sort of become, there's got to be some level of connection between the two. And maybe that influences some people
Also,
to at
when
least
you
follow
see a
through that.
celebrity for using a car, you're like, oh, achhi hai. But when you see an influencer talking about, you feel relatable to it. There's a difference of that.
No, let me add to that
Yeah.
confusion. And it's a wrong choice of celebrity if the person has no values aligned with the brand. So that's one. Let's agree to kind of live in this confusion. And I do not believe influencers should aspire to become celebrities. They should aspire to become good content creators because they can say a lot more, bring alive a lot more dimensions of what your product, your service, your belief, and especially your experience. One big difference which a celebrity versus an influencer is the everyday experience of it. I have rarely come across a brand which is able to unlock every dimension of its portfolio with just celebrities. I think we lived in an era where we aspired that we could talk about the multiple axes or lenses through which the product would be experienced. And we were always falling short of it because there was no single communication which could actually do justice to it. Today, this ecosystem provides for it, and which is why this is readily being picked up by consumers. It's not an ecosystem which is getting driven by a single entity. This is an ecosystem which is primarily scaling up because it is seeing traction from the consumer. It is seeing traction from on the basis of the content with so many people. Why is it that a certain set is making a cut better than the others? Because they are able to find inroads into engagement. And this is true blue engagement. Do we have a measure for it? Probably we don't have a measure for it. But it's like, it's like before we discovered oxygen, people were still breathing. So I think, let us work towards building a measure, but that doesn't mean that we need to start measuring them from a very different lens. Celebrity measurement is a very different lens, and rightly said by Pooja and Manasi that those measurements are still conventional. The yardstick to look at good content creators has yet to be invested in.
In fact, Sahil, there is a very interesting example which I'm sure you are also seeing in the country developed around you. Good content creators are actually branching out into building businesses of their own, which are very
100%.
content-forward businesses, right?
100%.
People follow them for the content that they are creating, the lives that they are leading, the tools to building the lives that they are leading, and that's very easily spinning off into brands. There's so many of great D2C examples now these days.
Even at a lot, lower scale, all the three influencers I spoke to day before all three of them have, moved on in parallel
Ventured
to
into
some
something.
small things they're doing. Some are big, some are small, some are not heard of. We know the larger examples. But that's also driven, I'll honestly tell you, that's also driven by the fact that somewhere still they believe, which I think the brand should come out and give them a lot more assurance. Some of them still believe that there is a vulnerability heavily attached to what they do. Because one question I asked all three of them was, how did you become an influencer? One was working with Google, one was a PR agency expert, one was an actor, TV actor. And the answer was, they even don't know. Something suddenly in the night picked up. So the gentleman who was sitting here, he is one of the most followed creators today on Instagram for career advices. And he said, मैंने एक रात को सिर्फ ये रील डाल के सो गया कि मेरी बहन IAS में select हो गई है, उसने ये किया था. He woke up in the morning with 1 million views. So what they feel today is that while their growth was, out of nowhere, although they put in days of effort, their decline could also be. So that's a reason they're also in parallel building those, ventures.
It's also very fair, Sahil. I think they're recognizing the fact that brands want to attach themselves with them for the values that
So
they're
what does a
bringing on
brand
board.
look at? And that's also going to be one of my next questions. I'll stick to you, Pooja, for a bit. When you look at a high value influencer for you, by value I don't mean the value of
Sure.
their charges, but value which they add. What are the metrics or what are the things you definitely look at? I'm sure you work with your teams, agencies, but how do you define a high value influencer? Maybe they want to know that what should they do, what should they don't definitely do. It's just engagement rate, ये आपका इतना engagement rate है, that's it, or you also look at what they are talking. So what are the high value influencer criterias for you?
So, Sahil, subscriber base, engagement rate, etc., are very, very high level, top level metrics. I don't think too many brands use only those to filter influencers anymore. For example, at Philips, we very specifically are looking at 3 different cohorts where we are trying to build 3 different products for ourselves, right? Each of them has very different requirement of what we are actually trying to build. We're talking to different kinds of people, we're talking on different aspects of life, and therefore the kind of influences required for each of them is very, very different. So we've developed a playbook of our own, right? And we check for things like, for example, Philips is getting into espresso machines. Okay, we're trying to build high-end in-home coffee machines, which are expensive by the standard of domestic appliances today in the country. We want this to be built in a very premium manner. And therefore, one of the aspects that we check for an influencer before getting them on board is the kind of brand that they've associated with in the past. In fact, we believe an influencer is a brand on their own. The kind of content they make, the kind of brands that they have associated with in the past, the way they carry themselves, the tonality of their content, etc., builds a brand, which is what creates influence for them, right? The influencer brand needs to be able to share some values with the Philips brand. If there is no synergy at that level, irrespective of the number of subscribers, the engagement rate, it makes no sense for us to connect because it's just going to confuse the audience. उनको ही समझ में नहीं आएगा कि अच्छा फिलिप्स के बारे में तो हम ऐसा सोचते हैं, इसके बारे में हम ऐसा सोचते हैं, आपस में बात ही क्यों कर रहे हैं. Now, I think that ends up becoming a very, very big check for us, which is far more important compared to the subscriber base or the engagement rate. And I think it's important for influencers to also realize that they are brands in themselves. What kind of a brand do they want to build for themselves will also end up determining what kind of brands do they attract for partnership. Right? If you want to be somebody who's very massy, who follows a certain kind of language cadence, who looks a certain way, creates a certain kind of content, only certain kinds of brands will connect with you and vice versa. And I think that's, if there is one piece of advice that I could give to any influencers, I think it would be to sort of pause where you are and reflect on who you want to be. What are your own brand values? And every time an association comes to you, before you evaluate it on the kind of money that is being offered to you or the number of reels that you are being asked to make, evaluate it on whether you are able to actually share any values with that brand.
Excellent. I mean, that's a nice takeaway from what you said. And we'll move to Manasi also, and she's eager to say something. That influencers are a brand in themselves. So make sure your image, make sure what you do is also in the sync of.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Do you want to
I
say something?
completely agree. I think all of us have some vision, right? In our journey, in our growth, in our careers. What's your vision? Do not take the brand just because you want to make sure that your things are churning out. Have some vision. Have built your own vision board, saying that मुझे यहाँ हूँ, मैं यहाँ जाना है. This is kind of content I want to create. this is a loyalty I want to show of these kind of brands, right? Because the additional point where I want to add here is, important thing is how many brands you talk, right? Like every day I see a new brand getting sort of sponsored or featured in influencer. She's total no for me, because there is no loyalty, there is no authenticity. So for us, that's very important key,
So
right?
you're also looking at the frequency of brands they're promoting?
Absolutely. We need to make sure that because as an audience, forget about marketers or influencers. As an audience, as a consumer, I feel that she's just doing a sponsored reel. She doesn't have her own opinion. She's not authentic enough. It's better that she brings some value for me, right? And that can only happen when she sticks to certain products because she believes in those products, right? So that's a major criteria for us. Also the audience, right? I mean, we also check, while she mentioned about the hygiene check, the engagement, everything. Now followers, you can buy the followers. We don't check followers much, but the engagement definitely. And also what kind of audience you're engaging with, right? My product is a very female centric product. If that influencer has, let's say, 80% male followers, I will not go with her because she has a different agenda or different sort of a content there. So that also becomes a very key metrics for us to select the influencer. And I completely agree with her in terms of they should think of them as a brand, right? We value their efforts a lot. I think they are undervaluing themselves. They should make sure that they know what are they into, what vision they have, and then come back to us saying that, this is what I want to create. Happy to have a long-term relationship with them.
No, I think long term is definitely a large conversations. We all were also chatting about it. I
Right.
think influencers today also need, and a large chunk of them we speak with, need that assurance from the brands that
Correct. So
we're
you
not.
spoke about vulnerability, right? I think that is the solve for the vulnerability, that we have a long-term relationship with that influencer, which gives her or him an assurity.
Ganapathy, sir, for a brand as premium as Daawat, you lead the category in every fashion. And what are your thoughts on the criterias you have? While Pooja is that they are a brand in themselves, Manasi is very clear. We look at the frequency, the taste. You agree with both of them, and what are your what does your lens look at?
I agree with them definitely, and I would want to add to the fact that let's look at it. We are a food brand, a premium food brand at that, and food is the second most consumed content across the digital social media ecosystem, right after entertainment. And if I were to look at per capita credible people who are posting food, I think that's a far smaller number than the entertainment bit, because anything can become entertainment, but anything can't be good food. So that's one fundamental bit. Having said that, numbers become an important criteria to start off with. But are they, the only sufficient criteria? I don't think so. They are the ones. They help you get a foot in the door. But what's important is intent and purposiveness of the content you want to create with us. Okay, what do I mean by that? Do you understand the brand language? Has your content in the past, stood for what we would want Daawat to be seen as? So, in terms of associations with in content creators, in terms of what sort of content they create, and what sort of content they genuinely believe in creating. Now that has a huge role to play, because it is also the language. We are a brand which has a certain tonality, there is a certain appeal, and there's a certain brand stance which we have. We are a pure caregiver brand. We are a brand which enables you as individual who's participating in the journey of creating good food to look good. We are not in the race to look good. We are in the race to make you look good. Okay, and for that there is a certain tonality, there is a certain way in which the brand gets introduced as part of your life, and that role is very critical. So I think that can only be played by a set of people who believe in that purposiveness, or believe in continuing with that intent for a longer period of time. At a very basic level, we also check if the content creators have been flippant in picking up too many brands in the same category and dishing out content, because then that reduces credibility. And to Mansi's point, the longer term engagement is what we've started looking at for the past year or so now, because it's important that this flock of content creators is developed and is looked upon by fresher people who want to join this ecosystem to also aspire to work for it. It's not a function of gathering many brands. It's not a function of doing too many content pieces. It's a function of doing the right set of things, which is where I think if influencers start seeing themselves as brands, if they start seeing responsibility of what they are posting and not in just a hunt to have more impressions, more likes, I think they have started to go beyond it. And that's where the good and the better sort of start to get sifted from the lens of brands. So I think a host of these combinations, which are both qualitative measures and a quantitative measure of it, starts to make sense. And today, we are not even looking at these measures at national levels. At least for a food brand, which is as diverse as it can get, and food, as you know, is a very personal, regional, personalized sort of choice. All of these criterias dial down to very small geographies, sometimes even within cities. So if you go to Bangalore, there is a part of the city which is far more homogeneous in terms of communities, and there is a part of the city which is far more closed in terms of community, far more heterogeneous in terms of community. So we pick up individuals, with these different parts to appeal to that set. So we have to put these criteria even at that level to work with. And that's where the magic starts to happen. And I think that's the effort which jointly the content creator as well as the brands need to start doing.
Actually, he mentioned a very good point about regional nuances, right? I think it's a very valid and very, I think regional influencers, or if you speak the vernacular influencers, right, they can actually bring a better value for you than a metro city influencers, because again, relatability, everything is relatable and credibility, right? So especially in southern regions, we have seen that whenever we collaborate with the regional influencers, she can bring much more impact than maybe I take a celeb becoming influencers kind of a person, right? So also having that strategy well placed in brand's end is also important, to know that which market you're talking what language and what influencer.
Excellent. Thank you, Mansi. We'll move to the next very important subject around, while we've seen the creator economy become today a part of every conversation, there also has been a lot of criticism last 12, 18 months, where a couple of large influencers have come under some scrutiny. But as a brand, how do you look at them? We'll start maybe with Pooja. Pooja, what a brand today, is a brand today also very careful? कि यार ये पंगा मत करे कुछ बोल मत दे कल को. How do you handle, or what are your guardrails in the sense of mentally कि यार let's look at this, or you also see a past content बोले यार पक्का red flag है, इस creator ने ये किया है, अब ये दोबारा भी कुछ कर सकता है. So how does brands today look at, and I'll also tell you about an initiative IIGC has taken, but what is the brand's lens today on that subject around?
So Sahil, when brands actually open themselves up to associate with a whole host of influencers. For example, in 2025 alone, I think Philips Home Appliances, individual as an entity, has associated themselves with more than 500 influencers in just 1 year, right? The moment you do that, each of these people are representing the brand to the wider audience, and therefore we are also opening ourselves up to a lot of vulnerabilities, because end of the day, they are people. People are prone to doing things good, bad, ugly, and the way their audience perceives them cannot be entirely watertight and controlled at all points in time, right? So brands do have to be a lot more careful about the kind of people they're associating with. In fact, one very important criteria that we use for filtration is to actually have a look at their past content and what's been the kind of work they've done and what's been the response to that from their audience perspective or from their outreach perspective. Like the gentleman here mentioned, all brands carry a tonality, right? You want to be seen in a certain manner, which is what is the voice that you want the influencers to carry. If influencers in the past have carried a very different kind of voice, if they create a very different kind of content, or there's been a response to their content from their audience, which is not something that I want Philips to experience, I will definitely stay sort of away from them. I think one piece where I see a lot of work that still needs to be done, and probably IIGC is placed in a great way to sort of partner with industry and creators on both sides to do something like that, is the whole legal or the do and don't framework around this whole association piece, right? While every brand will have their customized requirements, their customized red and green flags, I think the broad red and green flags are very, very common and open. And I'll give you an example. We worked with a creator a couple of years ago, got massive positive response to that particular piece of content that we created. Just a few weeks ago, the creator again came into limelight for alleged drug trafficking. All the historical content came back into the fore with hashtags, right? Now, that's the kind of stuff that you want to really, really sort of hedge against. Not possible to predict at all times, not possible to also safeguard at all points in time.
But the influencer side of the world says mostly with innocence that they're not even aware that there are certain categories or certain forms of content they should have not dived
Absolutely, absolutely, Sahil, and which is why I think IIGC has a very important role to play. See, the advantage of IIGC is you're a neutral voice, right? IIGC is carrying the perspectives of both sides and bringing it onto the same table. Just as there are concerns and challenges on the creator side, there are concerns and challenges on the brand side. And I think from their own perspectives, both are right. What is important is to find a common ground and a framework that allows for both of those perspectives to sort of get placed and find a middle path of execution. And I think that's where I'm looking at you, as of the rest of the industry, to sort of bring something.
No, I think we're trying our best.
gives
Thanks
that.
to all of you for contributing. But IIGC also, on the 2nd of December, launches the IIGC Certified Influencer Program, where it's a 40-minute self-paced course. You go to iigc.org / whatever the URL will be, and you create a login ID password. It's a 40 minutes quick course. It takes you through the basic do's and don'ts, what are allowed, what is a certain degree of framework, and then you get a IIGC certification that, and I'm an IIGC certified influencer. At least it saves you from, the routine stuff which they say they were not even aware of. So Ganapathy, what's your take on the IIGC certified influencer? I mean,
No, I think
would as a brand you be happy to work with creators who are IIGC certified at least?
Absolutely. Because as you said, a lot of content creators today wouldn't know what exactly are the do's and don'ts. While it will still be the responsibility of marketers to bring them on board with what the brand is expecting them to do. And probably that homework should definitely be invested in when you're trying to take your pick of people you want to be associated with.
Yeah.
But having said that, it will also create a responsible ecosystem for people to walk up. This does not mean that an influencer or a group of individuals should not attempt to do things which are out of the regular. Okay, it will not stop them.
Yeah.
The fact is, you will do that, responsibly. You will probably, given a very clear example, there would be adventure influencers. There would be influencers who probably promoting a particular type of lifestyle, which would appeal to a certain set, but would look very risky to the other set of people.
Yeah.
But then that sort of responsibly placing content, coming with the right set of caveats to who should it appeal to, will become important. Like very simply put, in how does it translate into our ecosystem in food? There would be a certain set of food products, usage of certain food products, additives, which we would not want people to do. Preservatives, usage of excessive coloring agents. These are not things which we take active stance to kind of weed people out. And probably who are looking forward to associate with brand Daawat would certainly be conscious of this.
Yeah.
And probably come back to us. So I think in that charter, in that exercise which you're doing, you should certainly, educate individuals to also look at what sort of content they intend to aspire for. And that becomes important, and that will certainly open up a whole new space for individuals to just start talking about. It will also create, there will be a whole series of people who would want to look at product in its pristine way and probably come up with food recipes which stay the way they are.
Yeah.
Instead of embellishing them with things which are quite harmful.
In fact, you know what, Sahil? An initiative like this will actually also probably give creators a lot more confidence to be more transparent about what they want to do, right? Like there are brands who want to follow, let's say, the clean recipe path. I'm just extending from his example. And then there will be companies who are into the business of preservatives or colors or whatever, and they would want people who will do that sort of a work. Sometimes, in the absence of a transparent framework, influencers also end up, deliberately or otherwise, not being transparent about the kind of work they've done in the past or the kind of work they want to do. And similar happens at the brand's end as well. I think putting this in place will encourage probably a lot more openness of conversation, a lot more transparency of exactly the space that you're working in, and a lot more informed choice making will probably
I think
happen.
creators also want that the claims the brands make
Yes.
are also verified
Correct.
and sent to
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah,
And I've seen a lot of
absolutely.
cases where the creators have come out and said, can you give me a certificate of the claims you're making?
Yeah.
And some brands have not given.
Yeah.
Yeah.
कह रहे यार तेरे को
Very
पैसा
fair
दिया तो काम
ask.
कर. You know,
Correct.
it's
No, no,
become very transactional at that point.
In fact, we do a very interesting thing because we are in the business of appliances. Our policy is whenever we are looking at an influencer to promote a certain product or its feature, we actually provide them a product free of cost and we get them to use it first. They use it for a couple of weeks, and only then, if they find the feature useful or they've figured how to sort of use it, do we work with them. If they don't, too bad.
So
There's
there
no
was a
point working
creator
with them.
sitting right at the seat you're sitting 2 days ago, Pooja, and she was very clear. Maybe you can hear in the podcast when it comes out. She says, I only promote a product if I've used it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Fair.
Simple.
And I think that's
So-
the kind of influencers which will carry the trust that audience places in them.
And if you look at her content also, her name is Harpreet Suri, by the way, you can check. And she says, I am not in for dozens of brand deals. I will look at brands, I want to promote. I use them, I like them, I promote them. And then her whole affinity with her audience is skyrocketing because the audience also trusts the creator.
True.
In that case,
Absolutely.
I think also one of the important things are ये एक mainstream career बन चुका है, right? It's my own nephew saying that I want to be an influencer. It's become a mainstream career. If it's a mainstream career, then it has to have some sort of certificate regulation. You cannot treat it as a by the way thing because the kind of industry we're looking at and the kind of investments we are also doing as a brands, it's pretty much required. Now the blue tick doesn't count anymore, right? So such certification will definitely help us to have some confidence on them.
So next one is the realities behind all this. I'll stick to you, Mansi, for a bit. What are certain things which, again, the creators would love to know, which are not said very openly while we're all talking about the good stuff we look at when we look at selecting an influencer? What are some of those red flags or what are some of the things you say, कि यार हमें पता है ये हो रहा है. You want to pass a message around, it could be anything. Yeah, we know these are the things we generally don't say in the public, but we want to say today that these are the things we must all be very mindful of as creators.
As creators, you're asking. I think what she said, that first you actually use those products before actually claiming something, right? It's very important to make a claim. It's very easy for me to make a claim saying that, in case of Philips air purifier, very good in this and that, but unless until you use it, you will not able to claim anything. So before making any kind of claims, because people here are, holding you responsible. So make sure those claims are clear. Secondly, and again, I'm speaking influencer voice, being a brand side, still speaking influencer voice, be sure what exactly deal you're entering into, right? Make sure all the documentations, everything is crystal clear. If you're not clear, have multiple calls, have multiple conversations, but until you're convinced.
Yeah, subject like
do
the right
not.
of content.
Right.
A lot of influencers are actually genuinely innocent.
Correct.
In the way they don't even know what duration you've signed them
To be
for.
honest, in this world of social media, you cannot be naive, right? I mean, from brands end or influencer end. If you're entering into social media, you have
But you have to meet some
have
of them. Mansi, some of them are 18, 19-year-olds.
Yeah,
the kids.
And they
Right.
don't even know.
I think such certificates will definitely help
Yeah,
them to
I
make
really
sure,
hope so,
like
yeah.
have a framework to check certain things on a brand. Because sometimes you go with the name of the brand or just to start your career, but don't start unless until you know the product. You read the label in case of, let's say, food products, and use them before making any claims.
One of the very large influencers we manage, I'll not name him, he's 18 years old. Every shoot he goes, his mom is with him. He's so young. So you can understand, the
Correct.
mindset they come from. They don't know anything. So I'm hoping that's where IIGC plays a role
Absolutely. I
in
think
guiding them.
I wouldn't be surprised if you launch another course for them to teach how to be an influencer, right? I mean, that should be the next future, giving you ideas, but that's how it should be, right?
Yeah. Ganapathy sir, what is your answer to what are those rude realities, the harsh realities you also want to tell them?
So one is, marketers are becoming increasingly more discerning about the content creators, influencers you want to work with. I think influencers should also wake up to the thought that they should identify which brands to work with. And as I said, not spread themselves too thin in just wanting to cut the golden goose. Okay, so I think it's an important variable there. It's important that you keep your subscriber base real. Don't overstate it. Don't hunt for shortcut methods to kind of get a boost to it. Be somewhere to a large extent transparent about what is the value you're trying to give and hence charge for what. Because it becomes very difficult. For marketers, let's understand ROI is a very serious piece of conversation. And you are investing in such a big ecosystem. Now that can't be a flippant conversation. Person can't charge X and then can't charge 2X the very next day, or can't go back to charging 1.5X in a very different sort of ecosystem. So it's important that those realities come into play. I think they got to be careful about how they are presenting themselves, and that makes them more endearing for brands. Take the step up to understand what the brand is. While it's important to experience products, it's also important to understand what the brand is all about. And if you've been with the brand for some time, or you foresee yourself wanting to be with the brand, spend some time understanding the set of brands you want to be with. Pursue them in real earnest, because it is going to be even more confusing. The numbers of influencers are going to be always on the rise, at least in the near future. So you got to create your own space in this world if you want to remain there profitably, sustainably. So for that, you got to build your appeal, you got to strengthen your brand, you got to strengthen your equity. Your equity can't be traded off. So if I were a content creator, I would seriously think about this and spend time in seeing how I want myself to be visualized in the near future. I think that's a very important investment of time. And don't just be swayed by whatever is the next ephemeral thing to go after. So that, I think that's an important thing. Don't trade off your equity for the next big flash out there. So these are things which
I think one more point is integrity, okay, and
Yes.
without naming the influencer. So we had created a content with her, and we also used her content with buying a digital rights from her, promoting the content. Now, a lot of people were asking, hey, where I can buy product, DM. And she's saying, oh, I'm sending you the links of the product. Now, instead of sending the product link, she's sending her YouTube channel link, saying that follow me here. That questions the integrity, right? You shouldn't do that. If you have committed to a brand a certain thing, stay true to that. Of course, you're also getting some benefits out of it, right? Because brand is promoting something on your behalf. So anyways, you're going to also get some followers or engagement. Don't breach the integrity. Then it's completely a no game for us.
Yeah, no, I think IIGC is also attempting that. Once we're trying to create, as we discussed, a more legal document between
Sure.
the creator and the brand via the agency or directly, so that we all know the clear do's and don'ts. But yeah, putting a YouTube link is absolutely.
I mean,
no,
it
yeah.
questions integrity, right? That's never a. Yeah.
Pooja, what are your thoughts on this? Plus, creators want to know from Philips, a large consumer brand, are you looking at long-term creators? If yes, what's the strategy on it? Because we hear the creators, and I was saying approximately the large percentage, I'll not name the percentage, who said, give us long-term deals. We are ready to commit for a longer time. So what are your thoughts on the harsh realities plus the long-term versus short-term arrangements?
So, Sahil, two harsh realities that I will caution in addition to what has already been spoken about to the creators is one, AI generated content. AI generated scripts are an absolute no. It's the worst thing for the brand manager to discover after a piece of content has been posted that it's been lifted and shifted off something that's been done by someone else, somewhere else, some time ago or whatever. It's a marketer's nightmare. You go to creators for authenticity. If they are going to GPT their way into it, it's going to be a problem, right? That's one piece. The second piece is around brand mouthpiecing, okay? So there is this thing that is my personal experience. influencers or creators who reach the macro level are very keen to make the switch into being the celebrity, right? Which opens them up to this whole vulnerable piece of आप script दे दो हम बोल देंगे. The moment that happens, and you'll get a lot of deals, a lot of brands actually prefer to do that. The moment you do that, you're losing your status as an influencer, as a content creator. Then you're becoming a celebrity. Whether you end up becoming or not is a separate question. But I'm saying, I think as creators, you need to be super clear about whether you want to follow that path, and it's a great path to follow on. Then you become vehicles of reach, and it's fantastic. But if you want to stay in the authentic domain, then that's the other piece that one should like clearly stay away from. In fact, for creators, brands that masquerade as, or that want you to masquerade as brand mouthpieces despite being creators are red flags. You should stay away from those brands because they're clearly not looking for authenticity. They're looking for reach, and you probably are not the right one.
But a lot of creators also come out and say this, that most brands don't also understand what personalities we are and if we can bring them to the whole table, because they said mera brand tonality hai, while he says my audience likes my personality. So
Absolutely. So one of the things that we follow, I was speaking about this playbook that we've created, right?
because there was one very famous incident which happened where a creator was called to change the entire narrative,
Yeah.
but he said, you look at my history, this format of my personality is what my audience likes.
Correct. And they're not wrong, okay? Brands, look, I think the reality of the influencer or the content creation space these days is that both creators and brands are learning. Brands don't have a fixed playbook and a format in which they know how to work with creators, and vice versa as well. And I think over the next few years, as more and more money starts getting invested into this domain, a lot of learning will happen on both sides. Creators will have to learn and adjust. Brands will also have to learn and adjust significantly.
But I think that also puts the word for a long-term partnership, right?
Absolutely.
Because if I work with the brand a couple of times, I know the brand now. So let me be attached to you so that I know what you want, right? Rather than me going to your competition.
So, Sahil, long-term partnerships are a double-edged sword. Okay. While as a brand, we do believe that we are looking at a long-term partnership fundamentally because we are a repertoire brand, right? We have a large repertoire of products, each one of them relevant to your life, and therefore I can keep moving you with a bunch of things, right? However, as a creator, your primary responsibility is to keep your audience engaged and hooked. Now, think of a creator who's gotten tied to me for a 12-month partnership. And if I keep giving him the same product, the same thing to speak in just 3-4 different ways, the audience is going to get bored, right? So the idea is not for them to switch brands. The idea is for brands and creators to strike a long-term partnership for an objective that can be worked towards step by step. Right? And different objectives will require different things. For example, we recently concluded a campaign called Sone Pe Suhaga, which was a very specific festive season focused campaign, very short term in nature, which said there is a certain offer which is on for the next 45 days, go get it, etc. Now, for something like that, it's not possible for me to have a 12-month contract with anybody because, frankly, it's just a 45-day campaign. After 45 days, the thing gets over. But when I'm building a category, I'm building air fryer as a category, I'm building espresso as a category, there are different dimensions and aspects to that category that I want unlocked over a period of time. Those are cases for long-term partnerships. So I think for brands also, there'll always be a mix of long-term and short-term. For creators also, they need to also understand that if they're signing up with a brand for long-term, exactly what are they expected to do? Are they expected to say the same thing wearing 5 different clothes? Then it's a red flag. I don't think the brand knows what they want from the long-term partnership. But if together the partnership is about building towards a bigger cause, then I think it's a match made in heaven. So I think there needs to be a lot more clarity, I think at some level on both ends for long-term partnership, but definitely for a large section of partnerships, long-term is the way to go.
But is that the section, Ganapathy, that you're a part of? Because if I'm a chef or I am into one of your largest TGs of celebrities, I'm going to cook rice every second day or every day. Does it make sense for a brand like yours to look at long-term partnership even more widely? Because I'm in my kitchen और पीछे दावत का पैक दिख रहा है, तो दिखता ही रहे तो मेरी ऑडियंस को दिखता रहेगा, बिकॉज आज आप ब्राउन राइस से कुछ बना रहे हो, कल आप खिचड़ी बना रहे हो. So for your category, is it a lot more applicable?
It is a lot more applicable because, as I said, food is one of those expressions. Today it's transformed from just being something which keeps you going or fuels your day. It's become an expression of your own individuality. And that's added to the whole spread which you consume and not just confined to your region, but globally. Okay, so it is very essential. What we at least don't suffer from is variety. An individual can create as much as they want to create. It is left to their imagination and their capability to churn out stuff. So it's skill set and imagination. Okay, and hence that's not the challenge. The challenge is, can you hold it? For example, there is an individual who's seen to possess certain expertise to create a biryani, versus an individual who has an expertise to dish out nutritious, healthy food. And I'll call out here at extremes. So there's a person who's known to dish out great biryanis, and there's an individual who is dishing out healthy breakfast coming out of black rice. Now the fact is, what persona does that individual have as a content creator helps you move across these platforms seamlessly. Now that's an important variable. If you're looking at creating biryanis and you want an expertise of 20 years of having created and served biryanis, probably may not translate to equal finesse on creating a black rice. But now here, and coming back as a brand, today we take stances which are larger than and ahead of time as we see audience evolve. So way back about a decade and a half, we launched the whole health dimension to our rice with brown rice. We reinforced that a couple of years back with superfoods range with black and red. We've launched a campaign very recently which called Rise Your Awareness. It's a whole conversation about how important, how critical rice is. Now, that's a conversation which gets so many different dimensions of rice. So there are subject experts, as in gastroenterologists or nutritionists, so everyday people who are cooking. And it doesn't stop you, even if you don't know how to cook, to participate in that, because you consume it.
Yeah.
If you love it, you're part of it. So that's the sort of spectrum you're talking about. And hence, what it does not restrain us is in finding individuals who can express themselves multiple times, sequentially, through the year, and still keep people engaged. What is the requirement is the level of authenticity, the level of intent and purposiveness behind the cause. That needs to come out. I think that's very important for any piece of marketing content which is going out. Having said, because it's as simple as creating a piece of content. It has to meet to a certain standard. Now that's where I think recycling of content creators happens, because many a times people aren't able to meet up to that objective. And we are happy to see if people want to evolve to that objective. We are very open to also explorations where people say we want to attempt this. Very happy to do that. And hence, we seek creators who want to spend time to understand what we want out of a particular piece of content. I think that's a very, very important expectation from content creators as we move forward.
But does the brand ever think about meeting those creators, and how often do you meet some of them?
Always. I don't think we work with any creator without meeting them. Like, somebody from my team will personally definitely meet every single creator and brief them personally. And I think we've learned that the hard way. We have done a couple of campaigns in the past where we just outsource the whole
So
thing.
you meet
to
them
somebody.
after the deal is done, right?
No.
After
We
the
meet
deal
them
is
for
signed?
evaluation.
At the evaluation?
At the evaluation stage.
That's interesting.
I think that is not something that you can entirely outsource. There's, of course, a shortlisting process that happens just on Excel sheets, let's just say. So every campaign has a different objective, right? So we just concluded something where we went hyper-local. We identified creators for 70 specific cities in the country. And that creator had to be relevant to that city, need to have follower base from that city, etc., etc. So a lot of pruning happened at that level. Once you get that list, that's when you start identifying. You obviously can't meet all of them, but then you figure out who are your macro guys. So out of this whole, 275 plus influencer program piece, about, I think, 20 of them were probably macro in nature, which were definitely met in person by teams. And the team also made changes after meeting people. Once you meet people, sometimes you end up realizing whether, they're making sense in your overall scheme of things or not, etc., and then you sort of evolve. But I think biggest caution to brands from my side would be never go into an influencer partnership without somebody from your team having personally met them.
At least the macro ones.
At least the macro ones, even for that matter, the micro and nano ones, you don't have to meet everybody personally. Like the CMO doesn't have to meet. But somebody from the brand must meet, because that one conversation, even if it is a 15-minute conversation virtually done, can change the entire tonality of what you get as an output. And I think if a ton of money is being spent on it, which it is, I think it's important for us to do that. Think about it. You'd never go into an ad shoot without having met all the models first, right? Because you look at their dresses, their clothes, their accessories, their casting videos and this and that and make a choice. Why would it be any different for influencers? They're carrying a even weightier voice, right, of credibility and of trust. You might as well do that.
That's an excellent thought.
No, I think it's it's imperative. And one thing which I believe IIGC and the ecosystem should be able to do once you start doing this at scale.
Yeah.
We started this with 100 influencers at some point in time, couple of years back. Today we're doing 5,000 to 6,000 influencers through the year. Becomes a huge stress as a task to kind of identify, filter, keep track of content. If you're running 3,000 influencers over a couple of weeks, it is a humongous task to keep track and schedule posting of content, because you really don't want days where you have excess and days where you're running dry on content. So monitoring that, there's a whole different skill set of scheduling, trying to see what sort of sequencing of content is happening. So I think this is one area, one in terms of how do you communicate at scale, and communicate just the optimal so that you don't encroach on creativity.
Yeah.
I think that's something we all should spend some time to evolve to. Are we learning it? Yes, we are learning it the hard way. I think there could be a better way of learning it.
I think creativity at scale is something you all need to largely, figure
At the
out.
end, it's a human interaction, right? More you interact with someone, the enriched output would be, right? I mean, I have seen so many creators, because we work with long term, and I'm happy that creators are signing up for long term deals, right? And like him, we are also happy with the variety. We have fashion can be spoken about largely. There are occasions, there are different sort of places you can wear those garments. We have seen so many influencers come to us, or creators come to us saying that, yaar, meri is friend ki shaadi hai, why don't you just send me the garment? I'll just tag you guys. So they also think us as a more of a partnership rather than more of a commercial deal, right? And that can only happen when you meet them, when you talk to them. We invite them with our new collection launches, saying that, aap batao, aapko kaise lag raha hai? Because their inputs also matter, right? We ask them, we call them for the events. We say that, just do a meetup and greet up events. This is how you interact and build a rapport with them. And the stronger the rapport, better the output that you will get.
In fact, Sahil, I have a very interesting example, and probably both of the people here also use it at some level. We do a lot of co-creation with influencers, right? We fundamentally deal with appliances, and appliances, there are two very clear aspects to the appliance. One is the technology of it, which is run by the Research and Development Center. The other is the user interface of it, right? In terms of developing UI for every subsequent device, I think content creators can play a huge role because they end up using the device so much more to create that content. Sometimes they come up with insights and feedback that is so valuable for us to incorporate in version 2 of our products that we do. So this is also something that we are trying to put as part of the system of how do you sort of create like this positive feedback loop which results in product.
Because a lot of feedback they get comes from their audiences.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So that's also something that's an interesting to do.
So we move to the lightning round now. I hope it's going to be lightning. We decide the order. Maybe we'll go alphabetic. So we have Pooja, Manasi. So you're the first one. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions.
Wow.
Okay. All don't need a very long answer. The spicier it gets, we have 1, 2, 3 as the prizes. You all get something for sure, but the one with the spiciest answers get the. There's a jury here. There's a jury here to decide. Okay, moving. And some of them are very easy ones. It's not all controversial at all. An influencer you personally admire. Name one.
5,000 लोग हैं. 5,000 लोगों में से if I start picking up.
You can say 2.
No.
But someone you really admire.
No, I admire a lot of people. it'll be unfair to say that. Let's be clear on it. Because everybody brings a new character to it.
You surely can't
No,
win the
I
first.
don't mind losing my apple. I don't mind losing people.
If you have to
allowed
be,
any answer.
if you have
Yeah,
to
allowed
be
any
diplomatic,
answer.
okay, easy one then. Influencer you feel is overrated.
Again,
पहले वाला आंसर
You want to pass this? No. You want to answer? You can say something, sir.
I think a lot of there's a whole bunch of people, not just one individual. A lot of people who are doing all frivolous stuff are overrated. People who get fly by night, subscriptions, likes.
So we need the name.
No, I can't.
We
give
don't
you
need
name.
the description.
No. I'll give you a format. Marketers are notorious not to name people.
A brand you think has nailed influencer marketing very well, other than Daawat.
Oh, that's a bad criteria to go after, right?
She runs W, I run Philips.
Both.
I have two options.
Micro influencers or macros, what do you think will dominate 2026?
Micro.
One trend you think is really overhyped?
I think going in with whatever is current affairs or current news is extremely overhyped.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at brand equity. Brand equity is a point or a agenda which is very less spoken of, but I think it's most important for this ecosystem to be sustainable.
One very simple thing creators don't understand about brands.
We have ROIs to manage.
So charge reasonably, huh? Or deliver large.
Or deliver large.
Anything in the last 1 year which has happened in the creator ecosystem which you want to mention about?
See, I think people have become more responsible about content and about voicing what they will do to content. We are getting to see a lot more pushback if we are not asking them to do right thing, which I think is a very favorable happening. At the same time, there is a whole crop of people who are wanting to do things just because you've asked them to do. I think both of these are emergingly a good set of things.
Lovely, sir.
Thank you.
You were.
I had long answers.
You had long
but I'll
answers,
survive.
and knowing you personally, you were very correct. We'll move to Manasi,
Anji.
an influencer you personally admire.
I think, I will name people because I think we should give them a due credit of their work. I think Food Pharma, who talks about food and educating people about reading the label, I think I have followed him a lot. Kusha Kapila, I would say why, because as she exactly mentioned, right, influencer turning into entrepreneur and how the journey, I definitely worked with her before, so I have seen her journey. Lot of influencers working in a sustainability, right, and talking about how to recycle the plastics and all the things. That's the future, by the way. That's very important, and I think those influencers should be given a round of applause.
I think you like Food Farmer till the time he starts diagnosing the quality of your fabric and puts up stories, right? I know.
As I said,
I told you Sahil is going to have an access.
no, I think we are very confident about our product. So
Lovely. An influencer you feel is overrated.
no, I will not name it. But there are a lot of influencers who again claim that they understand again talking on food because it's easy, and he's right. I also follow a lot of food reels, right? In my saves, a lot of food reels are there. So people claiming this is good for you, this is not good for you, rice is not good for you. I mean, I don't know where it comes from a thin air, right? So all these claims which are without any proof, I think we should not follow those influencers.
A brand
at
you
all.
think has nailed influencer marketing.
Apart from W?
You're all there?
Again, not naming brands, but a lot of small scale brands, I think they are coming out with a very good influencer strategy. Very Gen Z brands are coming out with very good influencer strategy and they're doing very well.
Micro or macros you think will dominate 2026?
Both. I think this entire discrimination will go very, very thin. I think it's very complementary, so both will increase.
Both. One trend you think is overhyped?
Korean beauty.
Korean beauty. I live in a part of Gurgaon which look like it's half Korea anyway.
Yeah.
One thing creators don't understand about brands. One very brief thing.
That they are answerable to us. You know, whatever
So
they
that
create, they are
both
answerable.
answers, ROI
they
and
are-
answer is-
I mean, they are answerable to us.
They can't just put it up
Correct.
and go. Yeah.
There is some.
Anything in the last
answerability.
1 year in the creator ecosystem you want to mention about you think has changed for better or for worse?
I think for better. as I exactly said, influencers are now asking questions to brands, saying that why I'm doing that, and asking product questions. So I think they're also becoming very aware of what they're posting, which is a very good change.
Good answers, Mansi. Pooja,
Yes.
last but not the least anyway, an influencer you personally admire.
Chef Ranveer Brar.
Pooja's got all the answers, no? She's
I
really
got
good.
the advantage.
I have a different set of questions.
You should change the questions. You change the questions. Yeah.
Question paper leak.
ये तो 2 बार हो चुका है. Actually, ये नहीं
क्वेश्चन
बोलना,
अलग हो
ये नहीं
जाएंगे तो
बोलना.
जज कैसे करेंगे?
नहीं नहीं, तो वो तो
नहीं,
क्वालिटी ऑफ
it's-
क्वेश्चनेयर के ऊपर है
It's about the
ना.
answer. Completely. वरना तो हैम्पर हम लोग डिवाइड कर लेंगे.
हाँ.
But you can answer it again if you want.
Again, I've given you my answers.
No, but if you think that she's got more time, I'll give you one
नहीं,
more
ऐसा
time.
कुछ नहीं.
You
ऐसा
can
I'll
still
stick to my answers.
stick to
I
it.
think
Just change the
I also
sequence.
like
Just
Ranveer.
change the sequence at least. At least she'll be like, oh, इसके बाद ये
I also like Ranveer.
मैंने रट लिए.
But I also like Ranveer Brar, by the way. It's really good. Yeah.
He's amazing. He's like large variety he does. He does tips and tricks. And what I love really is when he does these videos around history of food.
Yeah.
Place of origin. How do you differentiate between गहरे रंग की हरी मिर्ची versus हल्के रंग की हरी मिर्ची? What does that mean? Like, I love it. I'm a sucker for it.
One you feel is overrated.
I don't have a particular name, but anybody who does anything anti-India or like emphasizes too much about the not so good aspects about India or aspects about India that need work on, I don't like. I don't appreciate content
Anti-national
creators or
content.
influencers. It's not even anti-national. Look, there will always be things good and bad about everything.
Yeah. People talking about Delhi Air.
Delhi Air, I think, is still better. There are plenty people who talk about things like poverty. People who talk about who
Also
make a lot
talking
of
about
fun
policies, you know, they exactly don't know what goes inside it, right?
I think there's a huge case for influencers to be responsible because from this belonging from this country, they also carry the name of the country behind them. It's their job to present a positive picture
I
of
agree,
the country. They are responsible for India's brand.
A brand you think has nailed influencer marketing other than Philips?
Other than Philips, I think Underneath does a fantastic job. I think Niche Hair does a beautiful job. A lot of other content-driven D2C brands do a fantastic job of doing just
Micro or macro? You think
Micro,
will-
any day.
One trend you think is hyped?
Influencers claiming to be experts in a whole wide variety of topics, everything from technology to policy to quality to etc. I think is a trend that's overhyped. Just
And
because
that
you
too
have
beyond
followers,
their categories.
way beyond their categories. Just because you have followers doesn't mean you get the credibility or the right to speak about everything.
One thing creators don't understand about brands.
That they can trust brands. That we are not here to take advantage of them. We are here for a partnership, short term or long term. They can trust us. We're not all that bad.
Anything in the last 1 year in the creator ecosystem you want to mention about?
Yes, and I think while both people here mentioned about positive changes, I think one negative change that's happened in the creator ecosystem in the last 12 to 18 months is anybody who's got like more than 1,000 people as followers or subscribers starts believing they're influencers and suddenly wants to call the shots just about everything, which I think is dangerous. To be able to credibly call yourself an influencer, you have to reach a certain level of influence, which I think is something that needs to be worked on.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's a wrap. Thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. It's gone way beyond what we committed to you, Pooja, especially. But I think it's going to come out as a lovely piece of content. As we are also creating content here.
yes.
And I think it's going to come out as a lovely piece of content for all the creators and some of your peers and the industry to look up to. Thank you very much, Ganapathy sir, Pooja and Mansi.
Thank you so much.